Hey, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil by Mike King. I'm sorry, it is a really loose night tonight. We're taking it easy, aren't we, Chris? We're going to have a little fun, and we want to welcome all of you. Chris, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Mike. How are you, buddy? I see we are both in hotels. What are we on the run? FBI looking for choir practice?
This is crazy, isn't it? Yeah, folks, we're split up. We're in different parts of the country. Actually, Chris, you're in Atlanta.
I'm in the Atlanta area. Yep. Shout out to Fusis.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Fusis. It's awesome having Chris there, and I'm out hanging out in Hollywood. So I'm sitting in Beverly Hills right now. I was walking Rodeo Boulevard today, and doing some window shopping with my mask on. I never thought I. Well, you know what? I never thought you could walk down into a jewelry store with a mask and nobody would even pay attention to you.
Well, which one did you have on though? That's the.
Oh, hey, yeah, I gotta check this out, folks.
Yeah,
I was.
Which one did you have?
In Hollywood today, wearing the Profiling Evil face mask. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun though. In fact, I talked to a motor cop while I was here, and we were laughing about a couple of things that go on in this part of the world. And I keep forgetting I've got to remember my camera's right here tonight. But yeah, so we've got a great show tonight. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be one that you're going to enjoy. We're going to actually kick back a little. Chris and I are actually going to chat, maybe tell a couple of old Halloween war stories. Yep. So that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Thanks for all the super chats. Thanks for all the donations, for the memberships. Barking dogs, I'm with you. I love Diet Dr. Pepper. I just wish I had more. So thank you. It's the only thing I pack when I go on the road. I pack my clothes and my Diet Dr. Pepper because you just can't find it when you're out shopping around. But yeah, so thanks for everything, folks. And we'll interrupt. We're going to just chat. We're going to watch. What are you eating there? Sweet tarts, huh?
Yeah, your Diet Dr. Pepper, and it's my sweet tart rope things here, wherever these are.
It's amazing what we do when we're away from our companions, huh? The junk food we buy and stuff. Well, you know what, Chris? I'm really excited because about 2 months ago, we reached out to Annie Cushing and we asked if she could work into her schedule some time to come and visit with us. And it's actually taken us this long to work out schedules where we could get it. So let's bring in Annie and folks, everybody, please start sending some shout outs to Annie Cushing. We're so grateful. Analytics, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hi, Annie.
Oh yeah, it's great. No, and now Annie, you're up in the Northeast, right? Is that?
I am. I'm in New York City.
Yeah, and how's things with COVID now? Is it starting to ramp up? The numbers in every state I've seen are starting to creep back up, and Chris and I both have done a lot of work at the New York Police Department over the years. We know the city really well.
Yeah.
It's been tragic the last 2 times I've been there to see that amazing city so vacant.
I know. Well, things have really picked up, especially where I live. I'm actually in Manhattan. But COVID has picked back up in the other boroughs, particularly Brooklyn. So I think they're about to go back into lockdown, or they're very, very close to going into lockdown. Like the New Yorkers do pretty well with like masks and stuff. It's, now that the tourists are back, they don't want to they don't want to have a mask on in their pictures and stuff. So, yeah.
I'm surprised, Chris. I don't know what it's like in Atlanta. I was surprised in LA today. I was in the city earlier, and now I'm up in Beverly Hills staying for the night. Everybody's wearing masks. I'm really impressed because in my state, there's still a batch of people that don't think they need them.
Yeah.
No, I think it varies, state to state right now still. So right out here, I mean, going into any type of store, restaurant, you should be covering up. And but I think once you get into the environment and it's kind of settled down a little bit, once everybody's separated appropriately. So
yeah.
One cool thing in New York is that so many of the restaurants now have outdoor seating. So walking through New York, it has this very European-esque feel to it, because it's just all spilled outdoors. And Governor Cuomo just announced, I think a couple weeks ago, that they're going to maintain it after COVID. So that's one kind of, that is the only positive I can think of. But
cool. Well, that's awesome. And we missed Zuki one from one of our Aussie friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we had someone else. I'm sorry, guys, I missed it. Maybe Trisha or something. And Crafty as Shabby Shack Jude. It's a Kiwi. Great.
Kiwi.
Again, man, if you want fishing, you got the place to fish there. So are you on the northern island or the southern island? Annie, what quadrant of the city are you in?
I'm right in Midtown.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that is such a neat area, and we're so grateful you're here. Folks, Annie has this amazing company, Analytics, and she spends a lot of time looking at analysis, data, and analyzing the data. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the Vallow case later, Annie, but tell us a little bit about your company and what you do, because I just love it. We've been doing a little collaboration lately, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So my brand started as a joke on Twitter, like way back in the day, and with my name being Annie, and I focus on analytics. It just, like, I joked about it, and all these friends on Twitter were like, get the domain. So so I came into the space when it was like the wild west. There was no established web analytics field. There were like a few blogs and stuff, but I noticed that they were like written mostly for developers. They were really high tech. And I was learning everything on my own as I went. And so I was like, oh, maybe other people, run into these same issues or have these same questions. So I just kind of wrote it like in plain English and stuff. And it just kind of, gained traction. So so my tagline is I make data sexy, and I wrote the book Making Data Sexy, but it's really just about like making data interesting, making it tell the story. I never imagined that there would be a day where like I would be using data to figure out a story like this. The overlap ended up being pretty eerie, because I published my I published my books. I wrote one for Mac, one for PC, the day after Tylee was murdered. And so, I looked back, just looking at something on my site. And when I saw that date, I was just like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so I saw, back in May, different members of Laurie's family all started coming forward. Like, it was just like radio silence forever, and then everyone started coming forward. So I just started looking at like, how can I make this structured data? So it's definitely a departure from what I usually do, which is mostly marketing data and web analytics data. So but yeah, I mean, it's all data. The problem was that this wasn't data. All of this interesting information was trapped in images, screenshots, videos, and that's like the most unstructured of data. So it was a matter of like actually structuring it, and then once I had it in like a database or spreadsheet format, then I could kind of do my thing.
That made me think back. So during the 2002 Winter Olympics, I was assigned to the intelligence unit for the games in Salt Lake City. And
wow.
we had just suffered, of course, 9/11. So we were 3 months after the towers had fallen. We were infused with this huge amount of money from the federal government, because the last thing that the United States wants is a disaster on U.S. soil after we experienced that horrible terroristic assault.
Yeah.
And so we were infused with all this money, and we had all kinds of capabilities. And I remember we had a huge number of intelligence teams that we had sent out into the community and throughout the world. In fact, we even had Israeli army officers assigned to our unit.
Wow.
I mean, it was a worldwide, global event to prevent terrorism. But I remember the challenge was, we said, just go out and get us data, because if we have data, we can fuse it all together.
Exactly.
Holy cow, Annie, we got so much data. I think it's still sitting on a shelf somewhere in Salt Lake City, unstructured. And, so how do you take all of this data? And I don't know, Chris, I mean, you think about the data in a police department. You got, 911 data. You got a gang database. You got intel databases. You got parolees and probationers. How do you take that, Annie, and start to put structure to that so that it actually becomes actionable?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because, in my limited experience just with this case, I've been surprised by how much, like law enforcement data is still analog, like it's still paper and files and stuff. And that's even more unstructured than video, although it's pretty easy to, or at least straightforward to structure it. So I didn't have access to like a really heavy duty, like machine learning tool, like IBM Watson, a tool like that, you could literally take the equivalent of a library, throw it into it. I mean, you can have data in video, in images, scans, everything, and it just consumes it. And then you teach it what to look for. So in this case, I didn't have access to that. So I was, I just started like a humble GoFundMe, where I track where every dollar is spent, and got transcriptions of all the videos and stuff. And then I was kind of surprised by how much I could structure it. So I just started thinking in terms of, what did I want to track? And so I wanted to track things like, okay, well, what date was this recorded? What's the title of the video? Who put out the video? Was it, Fox or EIN or, whoever? And then who was speaking? And then who was being spoken about? But it couldn't just be like, I couldn't just rely on if the person's name was mentioned, because a lot of times they're using pronouns, like these are interviews, these are, body cam video. And so I hired people to suss all of that out, like who's speaking, who's being spoken about, and then I just had this giant spreadsheet. And I still am hoping to be able to get the video from the last hearing, but it's a long video, so that's an expensive transcription. But anyway, so it's just once I had all of those columns, and then also I had to make it somewhat similar in length, and so like the actual quotes, those were in their own column. And for some people, like Melanie Pawlowski, I mean, that girl talks. She talks and talks and talks. So, her, like a single comment would be like, the equivalent, like the cell would have been like this long. And so we, just divided them up into, so that like no one cell was more than like a certain number of characters and stuff. But so in the end, I was kind of surprised by how much I could slice and dice this data, because there were things like I could find quotes like in less than a minute. Even if I didn't, like there were times I was like, I couldn't even remember, because then I also added all these filters. Like I added filters for like, if the actual quote contains a particular word, I added like a highlight, those types of things. But sometimes I couldn't remember which word they used. And so I would just say, okay, show me every time Melanie Pawlowski in this video talked about Tylee. and then it would just be filtered down to like maybe 12 rows. And then I'd be like, okay, there it is. And then because I have kind of nascent video editing skills, I would just go and, you know, I used to work for ABC back in the day, and I would just grab that section of the video and, you know, stitch them together and stuff. So yeah, so that's kind of what I did. So because, you know, there was so much misinformation, and there was such a massive number of videos, you know, and like, you know, documents from law enforcement, like affidavits and stuff like that. And it was really easy to get tangled up in it all. And I saw that reporters, because way back in the day, I used to be a reporter, I saw reporters were getting what I felt were pretty important details wrong, you know. And so I thought they're just tangled up in it, you know. And so so it just became a way for people to actually search things that aren't normally searchable, you know.
That's amazing. And I want to ask Chris a minute about when you start taking all that data, Chris, and you're trying to put together a criminal case, or you're running a real-time crime center, which is the environment you work in, is putting together these real-time crime centers. How important is it that we get this to align? Because Annie, we used to think early in my career, before I really got into GIS, we used to just think, just show me a dot on the map. But it's not about seeing a dot on a map. It's why is this dot important to this dot? And what's the correlation and the thing that really tells me and teaches me a story here, or forces me to ask more questions? Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, no, Mike, is the fact that most of that data, as Annie's talking about, right? It's siloed, right? And so you need to have those tool sets that kind of, you know, put everything together, you know, to her point. And, you know, then that starts driving the story and the conversation, and it puts in front of investigators not only, you know, real-time intelligence, but it also gives the actual intelligence. It's not this, you know, one-off type of stuff. So you end up focusing on it. So Annie, what became the elephant in the living room for you as you started to analyze and connect all these dots here?
You know, the really curious thing to me was, you know, I think that the major elephant in the room was, how could so many family members have access to Laurie while the kids were missing? And like the excuses they came up with, and not just family members, also, you know, Melanie Gibb is like, you're staying in her home. One of the kids is gone, or both of the kids are gone, you know. And that to me was just mind numbing. Like, you know, like this, just all of the stories. And so having the dashboard helped me like narrow things down. In fact, I was like creating keyword groups so that like if like I had a psychology keyword group, I still have it, so that, you know, like if this whole list of keywords, you know, but crazy, you know, mandatory hold, you know, et cetera, if any of these keywords were used, it would show up in the psychology, you know, keyword group. And one of the things that I found was that I was really surprised about was, you know, Melanie Gibb had this is just an example. I'm not trying to pick on either of the Melanies, but Melanie Gibb had said that, you know, Laurie had the psych eval and she passed with flying colors, and they said, oh, you're not crazy and stuff. So I did a search of just like all references across all of the documents, all of the videos to, you know, that psych keyword group, and found out in this little tiny, like nothing, you know, like we have so little of the, you know, of the affidavits of, you know, for both Laurie and Chad. And actually, this wasn't even in the affidavit. This was in Charles' divorce filings. It mentioned that Laurie never showed up for the psych eval, you know, and so, you know, so the like those little details, and I'm just like, why are all of these people lying? Like, why was Melanie, why did Melanie Gibb, why was she satisfied with Laurie's story that Tylee was at BYU when it was 1 mile up the street? They were living in married student housing. She was 16 with a GED. You know, like, why was her car in the parking lot if she was on campus? They walked around the track. Why didn't they meet up with Tylee? They would have, depending on which way they walked to the track, because I was just this obsessed. I'm like pulling up Google Maps, looking at where the student housing was that Tylee would have been in compared to the track. And depending on which way they went, they may have passed student housing, you know, and so all of these things. Plus, naturally, Laurie is a braggart, you know, so if Tylee had gotten into BYU at 16 with a GED, Laurie would have been talking about it nonstop, and Melanie would have known this about Laurie. It's just who she is. You know, when my kids started college, I'm not even naturally a braggart. I was a braggart, you know. It was like, did I mention, you know, and she would have started BYU the week before Melanie got there, you know. So anyway, so I'm getting a little bit in the weeds, but my point is, you know, how was everyone just satisfied with these really bizarre explanations and no one called in a welfare check? So that was like the scarlet thread as I, you know, looked at all of these, you know, different videos and stuff. It just seemed like once both of the dads were out of the picture, it was like Laurie had free reign and there was no one keeping her in check, you know, and so these kids were able to be missing for 2 months, you know. So anyway, so that was kind of the 800-pound elephant in the room for me.
That's really something, folks. We're here with Annie Cushing, and we're so grateful for all of you joining up.
Sure.
We've got nearly 1,400 of you here tonight. We want to invite you to, if you have some questions, Annie, would you take a few questions while we're going along?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll ask the back office there to look through and pop up a question periodically. And again, thank you all. I don't know if you've been looking on the list, but we've got New Zealand, Australia, Germany.
Wow.
Folks from all over. Yeah, it's been really gratifying, and to all of you, again, Chris and I say it many times, but thank you. So, Annie, probably this is a question actually that a lot of people have. We don't hear much about Colby. How's he doing? Thanks, BP.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, you know, I just recently saw an update from him where, you know, he was talking about giving himself permission to be happy again. And like I saw in this video, they took their daughter to Disneyland and or Disney World. I think it was probably Disneyland. And I just thought that was such a key point. Like, you know, because as a family member, I mean, one of the first things, one of the victims advocates from the FBI warned me about the first time I talked to her. She was like, you have to guard against burnout. And she said, I've seen so many family members, you know, get caught up in a case. And this one was, you know, particularly distressing. And she is like, you have to guard against burnout, you know, and so, you know, I applaud him for, you know, for especially with having a young child. You know, he has so much going on. I just can't imagine what this must be like, you know, because all of this drama started, you know, like the big fight between Laurie and Charles and Laurie going off to Hawaii and all of that right as they had their baby. So here, you know, they were with a newborn and everything was just blowing up, you know. So I don't really know much about, like, you know, what's going on. I think all the family members are just kind of running somewhat parallel paths. But I was happy to hear about that, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, Annie, because, you know, the sign of a really good, solid investigation is just what you said. They have somebody assigned to the family.
Oh,
And that flow of communication is so critical
yeah,
to not only the success of the investigation, but it lowers that that stress level
yeah,
that you're talking about. And so that burnout occurs because people are always wanting more data, and a good sign is to hear what you just said. So that kudos to whoever that person was. There's another question down here from Crime Powwow. Annie, will you be attending the trials?
That's a good question. I mean, I was really surprised that Chad scheduled 3 weeks for the current charges. I'm just like, I mean, Pryor can talk, but 3 weeks, that's, and so yes, the short answer is yes. But I'm really hoping they combine the trials, that they have one trial. I'm really, really hoping that they do that. But there could also be a trial now in Arizona. I'm hoping they will also investigate my brother's death, because I find it very hard to believe that he died of natural causes, given the course of events that followed.
Yeah, why don't we use that as a way to transition to that a little bit, Annie? I don't know if you saw the show that we did where we had Dr. Salerno on talking about some of the toxicology collected from your brother's tissue that was left. I mean, there were things that were done that have prevented a solid follow-up investigation that just caused Chris and me to pull our hair out.
Yeah.
And but let's go back. But would you first tell us a little bit about who Joe Ryan was? We always like to start with the victimology, we call it. So why don't you help us understand who this amazing brother of yours was?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of people are aware, like, he was the oldest of 5. I was the youngest. Total accident of mag props. And so, like, we grew up in foster care in separate homes. So we didn't grow up together. We were all in separate homes, except he was with one other brother, and they hated each other. I'm not sure if that's because they grew up together or what, but there were lots of like tension points and stuff. But Joe was the quintessential oldest child. He was very, very protective. He he had like the Ryan humor runs very dark. He is very sardonic, very, very intelligent and so motivated. Like, he wanted his life to be everything that like he couldn't have in childhood and stuff. And so interestingly, like, when I was in college, we had a conversation once about, because he was the perennial bachelor. Like, he was 40 something when he got married for the first time to Laurie. But I remember talking to him in college, and he wanted one child at that time, and he wanted a little girl. And I was like, that's because you want a daddy's girl. And he's like, yep. I mean, unapologetically, So I met Laurie when she was pregnant with Tylee, and he was absolutely ecstatic. I mean, like, Laurie and I were kind of teasing him because like she was still at least a couple months out. He had the best of everything. Like, he was that guy. He was Inspector Gadget. Like, it was like the top of the line, like he was showing off the stroller, and there wasn't going to be a baby in that stroller for a while, but like, huge emphasis on protection and all those things. Like, a first time parent, you're like, oh, that's cute. I hope that all works out. But anyway, so he was, and then I saw him again with Tylee when she was a baby, and he was everything I anticipated he would be. He was I don't do hyperbole. The guy was over the moon. It was Tylee 24/7. Every new thing she did, even things she didn't do, but he thought she was saying, sentences and, that kind of stuff. It was very, very endearing. He was borderline like Tom Cruise, jumping up and down on the sofa,
So I have a question for you. There's a very interesting point that you're making here. And one of the things that Mike and I, as he mentioned here, when we talk about a victimology, do you tell us about Laurie's early relationship between Ryan and Tylee in terms of how do you think she viewed that relationship from her perspective? What do you, are you tracking me?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was with them when she was a baby, like by the time, so when I was with them when she was pregnant, it was, they looked like a celebrity couple, like heads turned, they were just ridiculously in love, and I had never seen my brother so soft, not saying he was like hard and crusty, but he was just kind of like, this guy's guy. And then he was just so soft toward her, because she was pregnant, doing stuff for her and stuff. And by the time we got back together, so we got together as families when Tylee was, she was almost 1. And so, it's still at that time, like, he was still over the moon with Tylee, but there was definitely tension between Joe and Laurie. And, and some of the stuff you just don't know, like they're just personalities. I really didn't know Laurie very well, and so she had already had a child before. And so, she was like a little dismissive. She was, it just wasn't like that new leather smell had worn off in their relationship, and so it was hard to know at times like how much of this was just the new baby, everything new, and plus he walked into a ready-made family, with Colby and stuff. So it's just so complex. Like I think back to some of those things, like I noticed at times there was tension between Joe and Colby, and nothing. Yeah. So there was just a lot. Plus, then my kids were there. So, and they were in a brand new house. And, so, he like was maxing out the number of stressors at that time. But, I didn't pick up at that time. I didn't pick up on anything inappropriate with Laurie that I can think back to. It wasn't until she was married to Charles, and then we met up for one more vacation, family vacation, just because I was living in Florida with my kids at the time, and she and Charles came to Florida close to where I was, and was like, "Oh, come be with us." And then at that point, she was already divorced. She and my brother had divorced, and there were definitely troubling things in that. In that vacation.
So Annie, I wondered, and to Draw Latina, thank you so very much. We appreciate it. We, like you, have watched Annie for some time and really appreciate the insight. And Annie, I gotta just call you out on this. I have actually seen a word or two misspelled in your document, and I've seen something that was wrong. I just want to clear that out because everybody tells me that I've made a mistake with one word or something. So I wanted to dogpile on you.
You have no idea. So I had a total of 5 people doing these transcriptions, plus a transcription service. And I used to be an editor. but like you only have so much time, having to let some of that stuff go. Like every once in a while, like I would find a particular quote and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I would never spell your like that, like it's the wrong you're, the wrong to, all those things. So I'm just like, if I could have, I would have gone through and edited every line, because
thankfully we have been really blessed with a family in the Profiling Evil family that actually recognize what goobers Chris and I are. So they're really quite tender with us about how stupid we are at times. But one thing we do know, folks, is we know criminal behavior and we know normal behavior. And Annie, I just want to, because we got to kind of move on, and I hope you'll come back, but I want to ask you about something. I want to take you back to when Alex assaults Joe with the stun gun. And I want to know if you ever had any conversation with him and what the conversation was about what was going on, because here we can start to see these from a behavioral standpoint. We really start to see the foundations being put into place. And we could talk later about, money trails and everything else like that. But let's just talk behavior for a minute. What did you learn back then, or did you learn anything?
No, see, so I wasn't in communication with Joe at that time. When we vacationed together in 2003, some of the tensions I referenced, they spilled over into how he interacted with my kids, and I didn't like how he was treating Colby at times, and he was raging a lot. And my kids had never, it's not like they grew up in the Cleaver home, that they had never witnessed like that level of rage. And so he and I had a falling out over that. And so we, ironically, and I've posted screenshots of this, because it's just like there are so many bizarre elements, to this story. But I had actually just found out in March, because our mother was homeless. She's, she had a number of mental health issues. She's schizophrenic. So she lived in New York City, but she was homeless for years. So every once in a while I would do like background checks, just looking for her to see if she was okay. And then this one that I had saved, this one time I pulled it up and it just, giant red letters, deceased. And she had been deceased for years. So I had reached out to Joe, and, it just so happened that if the ME or if the autopsy is correct, he was already dead in his bed waiting to be found, because he was
Okay.
He was just for a week. And anyway, so it's just like I was hoping to reconnect, because that would be something we would kind of have in common, just to bridge that gap, but anyway, so but I mean, with age and maturity, like I was already able to look back and be like, I just started reading, like I went through therapy. I read The Body Keeps the Score, and I was like, oh my gosh, some of the stuff, it was like, that's Joe. This was trauma. He wasn't like just a jerk. He was, dealing with a lot. And now, now that I know this other very much darker side to Laurie, at the time I was just like, why are you treating Laurie this way? Like she just seems so wonderful and so innocent, So now I look back and I'm like, yeah, he was probably at that point, he may have already seen her true colors. So anyway.
The colors of a chameleon, especially when you look at criminal behavior, are so difficult and challenging and so emotional. And gosh, thank you for sharing such tender things with us too. Have you found peace, Annie, with all of this?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, it was, very tumultuous, because it was just like, there were just so many layers of tragedy. Even, Laurie having me come out there after his death. And, there were just so many, layers of tragedy. So in the beginning, I was, pretty shaken. But I think like focusing on the case kind of kept me tethered. And then lately, I've found a little bit more distance as things have calmed down. Laurie and Chad are at least both in jail awaiting trial. And I can tell I'm like coming more to peace with it because of how I am when I wake up. Like I would just wake up so angry or so sad, and I'm not like an angry person, and so I've noticed I started waking up like, kind of feeling normal. And so, I could very much relate to what Colby had said about like, kind of giving myself permission to be happy again, to like go out and enjoy fall in Connecticut and, things like that. So, it's still, I have to brace myself for the very, very long haul because this could be a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, your feelings. Just to kind of dovetail on what Mike was saying. So as all of this starts coming together here, you're kind of in maybe the halfway point, right? I mean, with all the trial and all the publicity and all of that's going to come along. If somebody is watching tonight, such as Laurie or Chad or anybody in that, what would you say to them? What do you want them to know?
That's such a good question. It's I would just say, I've followed enough true crime. I was a true crime junkie before all of this happened. Now I can't even watch anything true crime. But like eventually the truth has a way of coming out. And I don't mean that as a Pollyanna, but like I would make an appeal to them, like put the truth out there. I know that is like unrealistic. They're both going to spin their stories and, do their thing. But if they don't tell the story, other people will, and so, I don't know. Like part of me is kind of like any message I have for them because, they're sociopaths. Like, I feel like I'd be spitting into the wind. Like I doubt they feel what, non-sociopaths feel. Like I could say like, look at the damage, look at the, just the domino effect of destruction that they caused when they could have just divorced and married. You know what I mean? Like it was, but I know that they would be unaffected by it, so yeah. Now, so the pragmatist in me is like, I don't have anything to say to them.
So now empower yourself and let them know that you and others are moving on.
Yeah.
And that you're going to heal and that it's going to be, take their power away from them.
Right.
Which you have done. So, I applaud you. So
thank you. That's exactly why I was just like, I can't allow myself to hate these people, because I'm like, then they win, they'll like
that's
that.
Exactly right.
Like,
that's right.
It's like an emotional cancer. And when I was really wrestling with it, I was like, no, they can't win. I can't become like this, person who just distrusts everyone and closes, off and all those things that you feel, initially. And so, the reality is the world is going to move on, and someday they're just going to be, it's going to be like helter skelter, like they're going to hopefully, not leave prison until like they're, in a wooden box, and the rest of the world is just going to move on without them. They're going to be a faint memory, and so absolutely.
Annie, Annie, I've been watching these comments, and folks, I hope you'll weigh in and send your wishes to Annie here. Draw Latina, and I loved one comment that she made, but she asked, is there going to be any investigation into his death any further that you're aware of? Do you know if anything's going to happen in that regard?
Into Joseph?
Yeah. Will there be anything additional? Good.
So,
and
no,
maybe
I don't know. So I reached out to the investigator who is over his his file or whatever, Detective Johnny Meyer, and he was very dismissive. He was like, we're not reopening the investigation. And, he even mansplained to me, your brother died of a heart attack. And I was just like, don't confuse kindness with weakness. And so I just reached out to the FBI in Phoenix and was like, because I even said, what about, why aren't you guys at least chasing down the, the life insurance, because that could be a critical clue. Like if he had a life insurance policy that was left to Tylee, or was it did it have to be in Laurie's name? And so he had told me, well, if you're interested in the life insurance money, that's a civil matter. And I was like, I am not one of these money grubbers. You know exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. And so, he was just so dismissive. So I went to the FBI, and we'll see what happens. But I will be a thorn in their side.
You keep going, Annie. You keep going.
I got a lot of Irish,
Annie, will you come back on the show?
Will you come back? Yes.
I'd love to. I'd love to.
That we would love that as well. And if you have a few moments, let's bring in Trisha and Jackie, and maybe we could use this opportunity just to show you all and talk about a project that we've all been working on together that you may or may not know how far we've come along, but using the timeline that you set as a baseline, Annie, we worked with Web Sleuths, Trisha and her group, to start to also coalesce more of that data, and we're trying to put together in a format that it is so complex, and so there's so many pieces and parts to this that we've started creating a story map, and this will be released in the coming weeks, folks, but it's a collaboration between Profiling Evil, Analytics, and Web Sleuths, where we'll be looking at what we call this three-legged stool of Chad, Laurie, and Alexander. And in there, we'll be exploring a bunch of different things, like looking at the husbands that Laurie had. And I got called out the other day on getting numbers wrong, and I'll probably have something else wrong tonight. But just know that we're looking at all of this. We're actually itemizing and looking at things where they're happening geographically in addition to what you've come up with. We're identifying key components to each of those things and what's happened. In addition, we're creating, Natalie was unable to make it tonight. She had a conflict at the last minute, but one of our GIS scientists has actually been doing some link analysis between behaviors and people and locations, and that's going to be kind of revealing as we go forward. But we'll be able to see, I think, a lot of things in this that hopefully will serve as a good place for people to just kind of explore and get to know more about the case and what's going on, including some really interesting things. And this is where I wanted to go. And if you could just stay on for just one moment as we bring Trisha in and Jackie. But one of the questions that Chris and I have had that we have been digging into for some time deals around Laurie and her family. So first, Chris, why don't you introduce our guests, and Annie, just hang in there for a minute, because I want to ask one question to all of you, and then we'll let Annie hit the road, and we'll talk to Trisha and Jackie.
Well, I think everybody knows Trisha Griffin, who is from Web Sleuths, who has an amazing not only website but YouTube channel, and she's a fascinating host, and she's taught us a ton. And then, of course, Jackie over here, third-year law student and Web Sleuth master. Tell us a little bit more about Jackie as a whole, because this is the first time I met you.
Yeah, like, I'm very honored to be here. Never thought you guys would care about my opinion. This is like a dream. Like, people want to hear me talk about crime. I'm like, oh my God, I will never be more famous.
Well, welcome. And Trisha,
and Jackie, I got to ask, what kind of law are you going to practice when you graduate?
Criminal, absolutely criminal.
Yeah, I wondered. You'll be a killer prosecutor out there. Don't go to the defense.
Thank you.
Trisha, take a minute and introduce yourself, but tell everybody why you created and maintain Web Sleuths.
Well, first of all, I want to say to Annie, it's just an honor to meet you, and how sorry I am and everybody from Web Sleuths that you're having to go through this, the loss of your brother, and then dealing with these monsters and the losses of your niece and nephew. And we're here for you. We're an army. We're here for you, whatever you need. Okay. And Jackie has done just so much work. We have one other person, Moonlight View. She's in chat tonight. She did a lot of work on this project too. And Jackie and Moonlight are going to be on my show after we're done here. But I actually got into true crime because I got pregnant. And the only reason I got pregnant was I lost my job as a radio disc jockey. And I immediately got pregnant after 17 years of marriage. So I was home all day with my wonderful little baby who was an eating, crying, sleeping, pooping, peeing machine. And I had nothing else to do. And I saw this thing, and I'll make this quick. I saw this headline that said 6-year-old beauty queen found dead in her basement. I thought, well, that's wrong. There's no such thing as a 6-year-old beauty queen. Well, it was a John Benet Ramsey story. And I just evolved from that. Eventually, I took over a small forum called forumsforjustice.org. In 2004, I was offered the chance to buy Web Sleuths. It actually had started in 1997, but when I took it over, it was very small. It was really hateful. You'd go on there and boy, you had to put on your armor because it was just a flame-throwing, name-calling, threatening place. And so with the help of the amazing moderators over the years, we have tightened the rules. We've gotten rid of the bullies and the people causing problems. And now we do actually, hopefully, do a lot of good in the true crime community and to help victims and their family members like Annie and anybody else that needs our help. We are from all over the world. And I got to say, Chris and Mike, I always get credit. No. It's the people on Web Sleuths. I just put it together, pay the bills, and make sure that nobody kills each other, and we're fine. That's kind of my job there. So.
And you were recently on Discovery Channel, right, Trish?
Yes, I was very honored to be a part of the Discovery Channel, their second show about Joe Exotic. It was called, Tigers, Lies, and Cover-Ups. And it was about Carol Baskin, and her husband went missing in 1997. Shockingly, right when he said, I'm going to go tell her I want a divorce. And what a surprise, he ended up missing. I know, who would have thunk it? So anyway, Discovery did a great job, and they got a wonderful investigator, and they really uncovered some amazing things. And I was very honored to be a part of that. They used me as kind of a narrator to put the story together, and I'm hoping they're going to do a part 2 coming up really soon. So I was very honored to be a part of that.
Fantastic.
And this
so Mike, what's on the dock?
Boo's part of the show.
What's his name? Who's that?
Boo. This is Boo.
Awesome. Mike, where are we headed? Where do you want to go here?
So, well, what I wanted to do tonight is just to bring you all together and say, number one, how much we appreciate your friendship, the association, the chance to collaborate together. And I mean, this is kind of a unique community where I guess you could really draw lines in the sand and not like each other. Chris and I we just kind of like people, and we just have thoroughly enjoyed our relationships with you and with many of the other channels. But this is about transparency and getting information out, and hopefully pieces of that influence the direction of some of these cold cases. And there's a really interesting thing that's happened, and I guess I'll pitch this question to Trisha, and that is, Trisha, we watch, and from our day of being investigators, the idea of calling up a group like Web Sleuths was really something that we just wouldn't have done. Chris and I have kind of come full circle as we have started to embrace more and more that's available, but it still poses a threat to law enforcement that information, if they went to a group like Web Sleuths, might get out and become publicized before it's investigated.
Right.
Maybe you could just share how, when you have that opportunity to work with law enforcement, how that stuff doesn't become part of these shows that we all put on and show some of the things we're learning, but what we really focus on solving crime.
Exactly. Well, we've encouraged law enforcement to come to us for help. And as you said, Mike and Chris, you know very well, they are coming into the 21st century kicking and screaming. And they look at us. John Ramsey referred to me and the other people on the internet as beer can collecting housewives. And I have a feeling that's kind of how they still think that we are. Or they think that we're like some of the groups on Facebook that are just out of control. And we're not. We've proven in cases before that where the law enforcement has actually brought us a little piece of evidence, and our members were able to absolutely find out where it came from, and they were able to do exactly what law enforcement wanted. If something needs to be kept confidential, we keep confidences on Web Sleuths. We have a lot of insiders posting there that people don't know about. We have law enforcement reads there every day, Chris and Mike. I go on there and there's law enforcement from all over the world, and they park themselves there. If they could just come to us and realize we are not a bunch of crazy people. We have a very structured way of doing things, and we will protect any confidences we need to. It won't become a great big drama show. There will be no drama. I make sure of that. I come in with a big stick if there's any drama, and boy, that drama is knocked out quick. We don't tolerate it 1 second. So I'm hoping with you two on our side, it's going to make a big difference. In fact, I know it will. It's going to make a big difference when you can call up your friends and say, look, Web Sleuths, these people, it's different. It's not like how it was before when we didn't want to call them. We want to call them. Give us the most boring piece of evidence that would drive everybody on in your squad crazy. Let us do it for free. And we don't even want recognition. You don't need to say our names. Don't need to say anything. Just here you go.
That's fantastic. Jackie, one of the questions I had for you, and you'll have to answer for Net, is as you looked at the data that we've started to coalesce for the Vallow case, were there any nuggets that popped up that just kind of like all of a sudden you thought, holy cow, where did that come from? Anything new that you found that we added to that list that we hadn't been talking about before?
There's so many people involved, and they're in so many different parts of the country. I think every time I go over the timeline, I feel like I get something new from it just because there's so many players. For the longest time, I thought there was only one Melanie, and it was like, oh, wait, there's two. I think...
So, yeah, please. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, probably just the amount of sort of premeditation that Laurie and Chad kind of went through with the relationship, like creating the fake email account for Charles. There was a lot of planning that went on before everything actually happened. And when you dig into the details, you can really see how far out they were really starting to plan everything.
So Annie, here's I guess I wanted to kind of get your sense on this, and I kind of teased with it a minute ago, but one of the things that we've been intrigued by from a behavioral standpoint is looking into Stacy Cox Cope's life and the challenges that poor gal faced.
Yeah.
There are indications in the court documents of schizophrenia in the father, of both Laurie and Stacy. Have you given any thought to this idea of schizophrenia playing a part in any of the things that happened, even with Laurie, and in all the things that led up to these, feelings of zombies and everything else?
I met Barry Cox. I met Barry and Janice. They were very kind to me, very kind to my family. To be perfectly honest, I don't see. Now, of course, I have absolutely no medical training, no psychological training, but I think I can speak more to Laurie because I've had more interactions with Laurie, and I'll just really quick, because this one piece of her story kind of went public with Inside Edition, and that was she went on Wheel of Fortune, but the way she told me the story, and this is where it kind of ties in. So like and Joe was there when she was telling the story, I think. It might have been Charles, but she said that God told her she was going to be on Wheel of Fortune. And so she's telling me this story about how God told her, and then, Joe thought she was crazy. And I was like, well, yeah, Joe had no tolerance for that kind of stuff, but like, I would look at it and say, well, statistically, she was drop dead gorgeous. She was very effervescent, and it's an audition. So the chances of her winning an audition seem like, pretty good. But in her mind, God told her, and that's why she was on Wheel of Fortune, And so I think over time, my opinion is that I think like where other people would say, they would have a little more humility, like, I don't know, I had this idea, it might work, it might not work. It's like running a business, you throw spaghetti against the wall, see what sticks. In her mind, everything, there was just this like grandiosity where it was just like, God told me this, God told me that, and I noticed it a lot more in 2007. And so I think in those years that we had fallen out of touch, like when we picked back up in 2018, I barely recognized her because like everything was, God told me this, and talking about the end times. She had never talked about the end times. So I think she already had that kind of gravitational pull. And then I think when she connected with Chad Daybell, it was like someone else who thinks the same things, but even like crazier, in some respects. So yeah, going back to Barry and Janice, I mean, they were eccentric. Their family was very eccentric. But it was a close-knit family and stuff. The one thing that is unusual to me in looking back is that she told me about all of her family members. I mean, you have to kind of keep it in mind, like this is a very talky, very gossipy family. So I knew about drama in their family, about people like I had never even met, and like people were always coming by, like different family members and stuff. But one thing that's interesting to me is she never once mentioned Alex. Never. Like I knew she had another brother, but she never ever talked about him. And
in retrospect, I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
Yeah, no.
But now looking backwards, why do you think that was?
There are a lot of theories about how, like, because he was doing all these crazy things for her, he seemed to be like the family hitman. All of these things, like, there are a lot of theories that like there was an incestuous relationship and things like that. I actually don't believe that. If I had to guess, I would say he was beholden to her for some reason. Like there was something, I believe there was something in their past that he did that he was indebted to her, and he was like her manservant. But I don't think she had a lot of affection for him, just judging by, like, I heard about Melanie. I heard about, not Melanie Gibbs, she wasn't in the picture yet, but, you know, Melanie at the time, Melanie Boudreau, she loved Melanie. She could not, the one person she couldn't talk about without tearing up was Stacy. And, you know, so I knew so much about her family because she's very extroverted and very much a talker, you know, and yet I knew nothing about Alex. I was surprised that Alex lived in the same area. Even when I was there in 2018, she did not talk about Alex, and he never came by. So other family members would come by, and he never came by. So
Mike, why I know where you're going to go, but I'm going to ask you just curious. Well, why is he siloed like that? Do you think? I mean, what do we got going on behind the play there in the secret life with her? You're
Mike's muted.
You're sounds
He's
like
finally muted.
It happens to the best of us, Mike.
Yeah. You're gonna have to get it back on, bud. I'm gonna.
There you go. Is that it?
Yeah.
You there, Mike? Okay. Well, all right. Sorry. Okay. While he gets his sound back, and you guys have seen me do this a lot, right? Trish, right?
No, yeah. We all do it. Sure.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start spinning plates here, but
that's fine.
It's fascinating that, you know, he is kind of in the background, right? I mean, when we look at, you know, criminal behavior, it's called the behavioral analysis, right? This idea that, are you back, Mike? Are you back?
Think so. Am I back?
Yeah. Okay. So
I needed the back office to tell me to do something.
Okay. So do you know where you were headed? Did you
go ahead? No, Chris, you're right on. Keep going. Yep.
Well, no, I was just curious as to why he is so siloed in this whole thing. Even you know, with Annie, as much as, you know, exposure she's had with, you know, the family as a whole, and Laurie, how, you know, she's come up with this idea that says, hey, you know, maybe there's something darker and deeper behind the scenes back in the day that she's kind of, you know, been carrying that weight forward against him as almost this dark night. Yeah, what do you think?
It would be really interesting to learn more about what the dynamic was between those two individually, and but more importantly, it reminded me of a killer that I worked a case on, where the killer kept reminding everyone, I am the voice of the Lord and you are the arm of the Lord. In fact, in other words, I'll tell you what to do and your job is just to act out and do what I tell. And so it's almost like a minion that's working under the command and direction of this superior force. And it may have been a very empowering thing for both of them. You know, it's not, we sometimes think, oh, this guy was, you know, maybe being manipulated and pushed around. There's really something powerful about being the enforcer in an organization. So it'll be really interesting to come back with that. And I wanted to just throw to Jackie and Trisha just one quick question, and that was, as we worked on this spreadsheet, were there anything that you thought was, and I already asked if there was an aha moment, but anything that you thought was just so compelling that it needed further investigation that you and your group are going to continue to try to follow up on?
Yeah, you know what? Yes. And now I can't remember what it was, but I believe.
But it was compelling.
But it was compelling, and I thought, we've got to look into this. I believe, oh boy, I hope I'm not telling tales out of school here. It had something to do with a neighbor.
Yeah. So
who suddenly died.
Not me, but Moonlight View found that one of Chad's neighbors, who he was sort of close with, right after the bodies were buried on his property, mysteriously passed away.
Right.
So we don't know if that's coincidence, but that's usually.
And I had an insider call me and tell me all about that, and it was very, very compelling. So that's something. Again, it just seems like wherever Chad and Laurie go, people literally drop dead. And that needs to be looked into more, and we will. We definitely will. Whatever we can find out, we will. 2
of Laurie's attorneys, and it's reported that she said, in regard to the bankruptcy attorney, that it worked out in her favor that he died because she still owed him a lot of money. So you don't know how much it's fact or fiction, but it just seems like, yeah, she's like the Grim Reaper.
How many people? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I was going to say, how many people around all of you have died recently? Right. 10 years ago with me. I mean, the odds are astronomical. That many people around Laurie.
And you're actually, I think if I remembered right, you're actually talking about Eldon Clausen or something like that.
Yes, I believe that's his name. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Well, gosh, Chris, I don't know anything additional. I want you're all welcome to stay on. We're going to put you in the back room in a minute here if you want to listen in, because I wanted to just get to chats and answer some questions, but I really wanted to know something. It's been driving me crazy. I asked Chris to tell me about 10 minutes ago on chat about his favorite law enforcement Halloween story, and then I'm going to tell mine. And we're going to try to loosen it up a little on this show, because prior practice isn't meant to be so solemn,
right,
troubling, and yet this is such a heavy topic. And Annie, we say that with absolute reverence toward Joe and everyone else. We are so grateful for what you have done coming in, and want you to know that we love and appreciate you, and we pray for you and your family as you work through this wacky situation.
Yeah, and this is how the Ryan family would handle this. Like, we can't stay, you can only stay in that, that kind of dark place for so long before someone says something inappropriate,
Exactly.
Well, we hope you'll all come back. Chris, I don't know, any thoughts before we make a little shift here?
No, I mean, I just think, we are so grateful. Jackie, we didn't hear a whole bunch from anything we didn't ask you that you feel is important that you'd want to share with us that,
Nothing about the case, just because there's so much, but I'd love to come back anytime. I love working with data, so it was really fun to I don't want to say fun to work on this project, but I enjoyed it, and I felt like it was a really worthwhile way to spend my time. So I was happy to be part of it.
And Chris and Mike, can I do an absolutely shameless plug?
Please.
We're going to do a show right after you guys are done. And Jackie and Moonlight View, the other person that really worked hard on this project, they're going to be on my show via the phone. But we're going to wait till you're all over and get the people in chat and bring them right over here. So shameless plug for Web Sleuths YouTube Live as soon as you guys are done, okay?
Well, we hope all the web sleuthers that are on tonight are subscribing to Profiling Evil, and that you'll keep reminding them to do so. We are so appreciative.
We love you over there, don't worry.
We do love you. We adore you guys. So.
Well, thank you to all three, and we'll put you in the little virtual green room, and you got to stay long enough to hear Chris's story.
Oh, absolutely.
Is it okay if we engage in the chat?
Oh, absolutely. And please correct us if we make mistakes.
Yes, please. You'd see me drive.
No, thank you. And we want everybody in the chat to loosen up now, and let's have some fun, and let's end on a fun note. I mean, I'm going to go out and walk Rodeo Boulevard when we're done here, and see the wacky people in Hollywood at night. So let's thank you again. Thanks. So Chris, it's Halloween night a long time ago, and you were working patrol or something. Tell me what happened.
Yeah. So, one of the craziest stories. So there is a graveyard, and I think it's like the 1400 block of Highway 101, which back then it was Hill Street. They used to call it Coast Highway. They went through a variation, and now it's back to the 101, right? Depends on, what mood the politicians are in. They keep changing that street. Anyway, there's a really neat little graveyard by some railroad tracks by Surf Bowl. It's a bowling alley. It's called Surf Bowl. It's across the street on the east side of the road. Long story short, the radio cracks, some weirdness going on at the, cemetery. Go check it out. Check the welfare, suspicious circumstances. So, you pull up, black out, because if there is something going on in there, thinking it's kids or whatever, you want to kind of, sneak up on them. And anyway, we get out of the car, me and another guy, and we're walking around and we hear some noise back in the back of the graveyard. We're like, wow, something is going on out here. So we get out there, and I remember walking down, and there's this like a mausoleum crypt, and it's got like 3 rows, and there's 9 of them. And they're three tiered high, and the top middle one, the front, is gone. Okay, and I'm like, oh man, this isn't good. Okay, so hit it with the tail light, and lit it up, and by golly, I think I probably screamed louder than the guy next to me. This guy pops his head out, okay, and he was sleeping in there, okay, and they had turned it. This guy had turned it into like a little hotel, a nightly hotel, and he had a little fire going on in the back there, in the very back of this crypt. And I thought, holy smokes, that guy just about gave me a heart attack. And that, that was reality. And I was like, how do you top that one? Right. But later on we did with another one, but that's for the next episode. So what do you got, King? Bring it up.
Well,
what do you
got? Mine, you're a dog. There's a lot of dog lovers out there. And so this is a story for all the dog lovers. I was working on a stakeout one night, and it happened to be Halloween night. So I want you to know what we had word that some escapees from the prison were going to break into a bowling alley, and next to the bowling alley was an outdoor drive-in theater. And so the tactical team that I was assigned to, the commander, said, okay, King, here's the deal. We're gonna get you up onto the roof of this bowling alley, and it's like 40 feet in the air, because the bowling alley obviously has a big tall ceiling. And it's a Halloween night, and so I take me a sandwich up there, and I'm sitting on this thing with my back against the front of the marquee so that I can see the entire roof of this bowling alley. And the word we had was they were going to come through the skylights into the bowling alley and burglarize the bowling alley. Well, when it starts getting dark, then it's time for the outdoor movies to come on. And again, I got to tell you, it's Halloween night, and the show Cujo is playing on the screen. Did you ever see the show Cujo? This dog that's possessed, that's killing everybody.
Oh, yeah, I remember it, but I don't.
Yeah. Well, I've only seen it with no sound, because all the people had their little box on their window in the car. But every time I looked over on that screen, that dang dog was going through the windshield of a car to kill people, or it was just this possessed mad dog.
Crazy.
And I was absolutely so scared and so mortified, and I was so glued to the screen of this big outdoor theater. Well, I was so focused on that movie, I didn't hear the 2 criminals get up onto the roof. And they were sneaking over, and they were standing right behind me, and they started to break the window out of the skylight right next to me. They had no idea I was there, because I was in the shadows.
Yeah.
Well, when I turned and saw them, I don't even know any other way. I started screaming at the top of my lungs at the highest pitch I think I've ever screamed in my life. And I hit the radio, and I was screaming, suspects, suspects. The 2 guys, it was like a Keystone Cops show. They started screaming, and they took off running, and the one missed their ladder that they put up, and he went down and broke his leg, so we were able to apprehend him because he wasn't going anywhere, and the other one got away. And so, I mean, I was so shook up, and everybody on the PD all night long, they were getting on their mics and yelling, suspects, suspects. And
yeah, you didn't let that down for a long time.
Oh no, I didn't live that down. So I was in the office writing out a report, and again, I told the sergeant that I was working for. I said, "You don't understand that dog. Every time I turned around, that dog was, killing somebody." But the canine guys thought it would be really funny. They snuck in the back office, and I'm in writing the reports, and they fling open the door with their dogs on leads and send the two dogs in to snarl and come at me. I'll tell you what, I was a complete basket case, and it shook me up so bad that the only thing I could do, Chris, was I left, and they were all laughing, and I went out and I put a tear gas canister with a string tied to it to the fan belt on the one truck, so that as soon as he started his truck, it pumped tear gas inside of the truck. But that was my Halloween story. So
that'll leave a mark. I love it.
So anyway, a long story to try to change the mood a little, but let's take a minute and let's just answer.
Got here, Mike.
Should we, folks?
Let's answer some questions.
We hope you've enjoyed choir practice. We got a lot of questions here that I'm hoping will pop up that we can talk about. So.
Yeah, while we're waiting for one coming up, I did a search one time because, I was a dog handler from 86 to 89. And as everybody, in our PE family knows, I had Irk the jerk. And anyway, we used to have to go in teams, right? Because whenever you had a call, if another dog handler was going to do the search, right, as you remember, Mike, with the building, then you have to have the other handler with them. I mean, in case, something happened to that guy, the dog, at least you could handle the animal. So long story short, we get into it's a funeral home. It's called Eternal Hills. It's right there at El Camino and Fire Mountain. And the alarm's going off, and we get there, and one of the other guys has his dog, sends his dog in, and, next thing you know, 15, 20 minutes into it, we're going through all the different rooms and everything, and we lose sight of him. We're like, where the heck is he, right? The guy I was with, and the dog is up on a casket, that's open casket, and he is laying on the casket. Oh, there I am. Yeah, that's Irk the jerk. That's Irk right there. And
that's fantastic. I didn't even realize you were a canine officer.
Yeah, I did that for 3 years. Actually, this dog saved my life. I can't tell you how many times. I know. Nice try, King. I know you like a book. And so look at the old bubblegum machine up on the top there.
Yeah.
Get light that thing up, and mustaches were mandatory equipment like everything else. And you see the two speed loaders out front, guys and girls.
Yeah. The guys with wheel guns know what those are. Yeah. Why don't you explain that? That's what we all learned. You had to do it in less than 2 seconds to pass.
Whoever's doing this is you're going to get in big trouble here, Skyler, if that's you in the background. I'm teasing. But so if you zoom in on my gun belt there, we didn't have automatic weapons. We had wheel guns, and you had a total of 12 rounds and 6 in the chamber, so you had 18 rounds. And boy, man, if you couldn't hit it with 18 rounds, you might as well run. But that dog, Irk, if you zoom in on the jerk here for a sec, I love this dog. This dog was 65 pounds, and he was an absolute, chainsaw. We had so many apprehensions, and working out there in Southern California, we had Camp Pendleton right there, so we had like 50,000 Marines. And you can imagine you just had a Friday night paycheck and a little 0311, which is hill pounder from the Marine Corps, and boy oh boy, that dog that had a field day. Well, the back windows back then, we didn't have screens on the back window, so the dog, we had a piece of skid tape on the side of the car, and the dog would jump up on the skid tape. And he could come out about like an extra foot out of the vehicle. He would literally just hang out a foot. I'll have to get you another picture one of these days, Sky. But anyway, he would just hang out there. And so you would try to get as close as you could to the curb, and the dog would come out an extra foot and a half, and people would just bad guys would just jump off the curb. And, that's her. Fluent in German. He was a Schutzen, as I explained that before, but this was our obstacle. That was the obstacle course. And back there, you see the van behind it. That was the old pistol range and rifle range. But we had the dog obstacle course right next to it. And, you'd run them on the other side. Sometimes we do helicopters. We would train with, we trained with San Diego, Orange County, LA Sheriff, LAPD. And we would, take the dogs up in different types of environments and, drop them down. And, these dogs are machines. They're absolutely just amazing creatures. I can tell you I can't tell you how many times. And I had a case one time where, we get down to the bottom of these stairs, and I just get this impression that, just don't go up those stairs. Don't go up the stairs. And I'm at the bottom of the stairs, and it was we were looking for a guy, and I just had this feeling, just don't do it, just don't do it. And so I sent the dog, and Irk gets up there, and I just hear this howl going on. I mean, this guy just screaming, and Irk's got him. And, I'm like, good boy. And what's really weird is, you praise them, right? Because they think, oh, well, Dad's, the bad guy's hitting me, and Dad's saying, good job. So they think it's play. So they cross associate that. Long story short, I get up there, hook this guy up, pull the fur coat off of him, and he's looking at me, crying like a baby. And I look over next to him, and there's about a 12-inch butcher knife laying next to him. And he says to me, he says, I didn't anticipate the dog. He said, I thought you were going to come up here. And he says, I was ready to take you on. So that's just one of a lot of stories, right? We could probably go for months, right? On choir practice. But anyway, what else we got here?
Hey, well, first I want to thank folks. Tiffany Stevenson, thank you so much. Zuki, one, thank you. Meredithis Dills, thank you. Dralatina, thank you. Deanna Pittman, Sandy Lee, thank you. Oh, holy cow. Me and my high school.
Marie?
Yeah, there we are.
Who's that with the glasses on their head? Is that you?
She invited my wife and me to come to her concert in Vegas years later, and so we went, and that was that was me with the long hair and the glasses. Holy cow!
Look at you.
The back office is
with a members only jacket. Is that a members only jacket?
Oh yeah, that was the older I get, the better I was. So
it looks great, right?
Let's take a couple questions if anybody has them, and we'll just kind of.
He tries to dodge. He'll let me chat around for 15 minutes, but we start chatting it up with little. Look at this is a great picture, Mike. This is yeah. The one on the right. Tell us about this picture.
Hey, somebody says you never finished the Eternal Hill story.
So we got the dog. He was
Tiffany. Yeah. Let's pull that picture off, and we'll talk about. We'll let Chris go on for a while.
No, we won't. We're going to go back to the questions here. So I think Mr. Chris got distracted and never finished Eternal. Yeah, please finish it. Okay. So anyway, long story short, we get in there, and there he is. The dog's name was Zach, by the way. We should call him the Big Zach Attack. Remember from McDonald's, the Big Mac Attack? Well, this was, and at that time, his handler was a guy named Rat. John Ratcliffe's his name. John, if you're out listening, I'm telling the story. Okay, you're listening. And don't give me any grievance later on. But anyway, the dog, he jumps up and he looks inside this casket, and there's this guy, getting ready for a viewing, I guess, the next day. And we're like, Zach, get out, get down, man. This is not good. We're the popo. We're not supposed to mess this up for this poor family. And but it was true. It happened, and it happened because it was an alarm call at 3:00 in the morning at a funeral with a canine show. But anyway, that's the story. That's the bottom line. It didn't mess anything up. He didn't mess anything up, and we didn't do anything wrong. Long story, yay. Right, Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, exactly. It's hysterical. That's awesome.
Folks, I hope you know how much we love you, and it is just such a fun thing for us to get with you and see so many familiar friends and names. And for all of you, thank you for supporting us. Thank you for signing up for memberships. That really helps us a lot. Hey, Chris, I got big news for tomorrow.
What do we got, Mike?
So, folks, tomorrow night, Chris and I will be on Court TV again. We have been invited by Vinny to come back and spend a little time on his show. So we hope you'll join us live tomorrow night. I think about 9:30 Eastern. Is that right, Chris?
Yep. With Vinny.
We got to spend some time with Nancy Grace on the show and after last week. You want to talk about that at all?
Which part? You go.
But folks, we if you didn't catch us on Nancy Grace, we were on Nancy Grace last week, and she was really kind. Afterward, we actually ended up shooting some additional segments with her, and we just are so appreciative of these folks that have really been kind to us. I'm in Hollywood right now. Tomorrow and Wednesday, I'll be shooting. It's called what? Hollyweird. Well, I'll be shooting with a major talk show, and we're going to be announcing the new book coming out on the Zion Society, and they have been so kind to bring us together. In fact, I learned today they've actually flown in a bunch of victims from that case, Chris. So it'll be the first time I've seen these kids in 30 years since they were child victims, now in their 40s. And I'm just so appreciative of the fact that they're willing to share that story. And folks, when that book comes out, I hope you'll all buy it. It would be very meaningful.
That's a big deal for you, Mike, because I know you. I've known you for 20 plus years. This is a big deal for you because I know this is a case that you've carried in your heart for a very, very long time. And folks, if you're not aware of it, Michael did a case many years ago. It's called the Zion Society. And long story short, he's assembled some of the victims that they ended up rescuing. And ended up convicting a whole bunch of people for, how many counts, Mike? 39, 40 kids, and how many counts?
Well, 32 children and about 4,000 rapes of children. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been carrying this case on his heart for a very, very long time. And his son and his family convinced him to put it down as part of his process of letting it go. And that book is coming out. And so if you get a chance, you got to pick it up because it's a fascinating story. And even though Mike and I are retired, we still do a lot of stuff, behind the scenes on other things with the Cold Case Foundation, and we train. And I got selected, coming up in next month, I'm going to go to the Bureau of Indian Affairs and doing some stuff with them. And
you were just up in Seattle training, weren't you, Chris?
I was up in Seattle a couple days ago I did an ICAC. It's Internet Crimes Against Children. And, so anyway, we do a lot of different stuff, and I work for a great company, and we just are in the environment every single day. So, but these are the kind of cases that stay with you for a very long time. Yeah, Tiffany, exactly. I saw a Raggedy Ann doll. Yeah, exactly. That's the long story short again. Exactly. You figured me out. Good job.
Yeah, Tyler, if we can, back in the back office, you guys, if you can find that Raggedy Ann link, maybe put that up in the chat box for people. If you get a chance, go watch that little link. That was something.
Well, and we have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. I'm sorry, Mike.
Yeah, no. I was going to ask you. So this week we're we're going to be. Do we want to share what we're talking about Thursday, or do we just wait? It's a pretty heavy deal Thursday. I mean,
it's a heavy case, but I think, let's tell them what we've got cooking behind the scenes. And well, first of all, let's tell them about who is coming towards Veterans Day, because I'm really, really excited.
That's a great idea. Why don't we do that? So, folks, Thursday of this week, just know that we'll be talking about a death investigation that you probably haven't heard a lot about. That is going to be, well, in fact, you probably have heard a lot about it, but it quickly disappeared. And we're going to be talking with family of the victim and revisiting this case. It's a really intriguing whodunit. So
well, tell them who it is. I think it's important that because it's got so many twists and turns, and we've got the family coming, a couple of family members. I mean, do we want to leave them hanging? Do you guys want us to leave you hanging here? Let's
yeah, you better watch the chat room while you talk about who we got coming the week before Veterans Day.
Yeah, how is Gene Mormon doing? Gene Mormon's doing good. He had a kind of a relapse. Andy's, kind of laying low. Haven't talked to him all of last week. There was, some folks ended up making it up to Indiana and hanging out in a pizza joint. And bought a couple of things.
Yeah, it's kind of weird buying oats in the old farm supply. I don't know about where you live. A lot of searching going
on up there.
But oats during deer season is kind of an intriguing thing for, if you like really hunting. But, and I understand there's a new truck in the works.
Yeah, there's a brand new white Ford truck. Brand new white Ford truck. It's just purchased. So, and that case is, we may see something shaking that in a couple of weeks. You never know.
That's true.
How that goes. But let's go back to.
The good thing about that is some pretty cool pizza pictures out too. So
yeah, there are some pizza pictures.
Lots of fun things coming down the pike.
See, Tiffany wants the long and short of it right there. Please share it. About Thursday. Well, before we do that, we got to tell you who's coming on around Veterans Day. So we have John Streikemeyer. He was one of the first Special Operations Green Berets who was part of the war that didn't exist. And this guy is a friend of mine and Mike's, and I absolutely love John. I've known him for a very long time. He is a real hero. And, we talked to him today. Lois Lane talked to him and said, hey, would you come on the show? We want to honor some of the veterans and for Veterans Day coming up. So he's agreed to come on. If you ever get a chance, look up the name John Streikemeyer, also known as Tilt, Tilt. You're going to absolutely love this guy. He's written a whole bunch of books about special operations groups and the war, and not only in Vietnam, but a variety of others. And he's a big deal. He's a big deal. And if you get a chance, pay your respects we want to pay our respects to all of you families out there that are veterans, that have served our great country, or you have family members who are serving. I come from a military family. Both of my parents are buried in Arlington National Cemetery. My dad fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. So I grew up as a military brat, and whenever we get an opportunity, and I know Mike, comes from military background with family, and we just don't want to just talk about LE stuff, on those types of days, but we want to bring in some real heroes. And we're also trying to get Tig on again and Oz, from Benghazi. So we'll see how that's going to go. But worst case scenario, we've already got Tilt booked. And so that ought to be a good show, Mike.
Yeah, no, that's going to be a fantastic show, and frankly, should be about military and the folks who have served in all of these conflicts and are serving today. So that will be really awesome. Just looking at the calendar, let's take a quick look here. We're going to be doing a little more work on the Sidney Sutherland case coming up, folks, and we think you'll enjoy that. We're going to have Mitch McCoy, the reporter on that case, in with us. We're going to be talking about cadaver dogs in the coming weeks. That'll be good. And we also got the Zero Abuse team coming in, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, and this Thursday, man, make sure you tune in 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and we're gonna retrace a case that hopefully will be familiar once you start hearing about it. But there's a lot of troubling things in that case that we wanted to bring up. So
and some of the things we're working on, we haven't forgot about Delphi, right, Mike? We're gonna
just need more time.
Yep, and because when we take a bite out of it, we want to make sure that we've got the right people lined up. And I know, Mike, you want to share, a little bit about some of the intel that we've already received. Some of the folks that you've talked to.
Well, we've been reaching out. We've been state police have asked us to kind of pull back for a bit, and we certainly are going to do that. We hope that maybe they're ready to talk a little bit, and we have family member in Delphi that want to come on and talk a little bit. So hopefully you've got kind of used to the fact, folks, that we try to just take it one notch higher as we look at these, so that we get a little more factual based information. We've had some great chats. Yesterday I was listening to Linda and It's a Crime, and I was texting in a few things there and love what's happening there. Duty Ron, Paula, I just love the content that's coming out. I like it, Chris, when there's factual based information coming out and it's backed up by fact. It's really easy for all of us to kind of want to speculate and share what our guts are telling us, but we really need to kind of focus on the things that we really do know that we can support with one or more forms of evidence, and that isn't hearsay as one of the forms of evidence. So
yeah, absolutely. And Andy did not buy a new truck or get corn or buy pizza.
No, in fact, I think it was someone from out of state that happened to be in Indiana, wasn't it?
Just happened to show up, maybe.
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting. Hey, gotta have pizza, gotta have pizza.
People are still asking about 5, Mike.
Yeah. Folks, I hope you're patient with us, and we certainly are trying to be patient with all of you. Code 33, Chris, what is it?
What is it? It's emergency traffic only. So whenever you're in a tactical situation, like let's say you're into a hot stop, or you're gonna light up a car, you throw the candy bar on them, which is the overhead lights, and then you hit them and they pull over. And the one thing that's really interesting, a lot of folks may not know, but you take your spotlight, okay, and you want to hit it between the driver's mirror and the rear view mirror. And the reason for that is it reflects the light back into the vehicle, and the driver's not able to see you approaching the car. If you've had a good field training officer, that field training officer has taught you never to cross in front of that light and cast a shadow, because the moment you do that, you give your location away, and a suspect who was intent on doing harm could actually get the jump on you. So you want to walk around the back of your car and then approach, towards the passenger side if you can. And if you want to throw them off, then you're constantly watching. So whenever cops see pull you over, and they're always worried about the hands, because the hands are what takes people's lives. And there are what they call 10 deadly sins in law enforcement. One of them is not watching the hands. So code 33 means emergency traffic only. That person who says code 33 has the radio. So everybody else is quiet. And what happens is you flip over to another tactical channel and you advise dispatch that you're headed that way. And I saw Val Bonzer in here. She was one of our dispatchers. She saved my life. I can't tell you how many times. Hi, Val.
Awesome. Thanks, Val, for doing that.
Saw you go by.
Now, the other 10 code is an important one. It's called 1042, which means it's the end of the shift. And so, folks, thank you. For those that are asking, we're going to talk about Rebecca Zahow Thursday night. So do a little research on that.
Big
a
case.
Beautiful woman in San Diego out on Coronado. We'll chat a little bit about that. So until then, thanks a lot, Chris. Have a great evening. Travel safe, and we'll see you on Thursday. Well, I guess I'll see you tomorrow night on Court TV.
You will?
I hope so. See you then,
Bye,
folks.
everybody.
Thanks.
Good night. Thank you.